This is Alex Murdaugh. My wife and child just got badly.
The voice asking for help belonged to Alex Murdaugh, but investigators would soon discover that the story behind that call was far more complicated than anyone imagined.
Mr. Murdaugh, I sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh. I sentence you for a term of the rest of your natural life for the murder of Paul Murdaugh, whom you probably love so much. I sentence you to prison for murdering him for the rest of your natural life.
For 784 days, America believed it knew the truth about Alex Murdaugh, a man born into one of South Carolina's most powerful legal families, a respected lawyer, a father, a husband, and eventually, the man convicted of murdering his own wife, Maggie, and his 22-year-old son, Paul. The case became one of the biggest criminal trials in America. Millions watched as prosecutors argued that a man facing financial ruin had committed the ultimate crime. The evidence appeared convincing. The jury delivered a guilty verdict. The case was supposed to be finished, but then the impossible happened. Court documents appear. The conviction that shocked the country was overturned. Not because prosecutors found a new killer, not because the evidence disappeared, but because the courtroom itself became the crime scene. Now, as Alex Murdaugh prepares for a new chapter in court, the evidence that once convinced America is being examined again. To understand why this case refuses to disappear, we have to go back to the beginning. Hey, stay close. This is Unhinged Cases, where the most disturbing true crime cases are being talked about weekly. Kindly subscribe and turn on your notification button, because you don't want to miss out on them. Long before Alex Murdaugh became one of America's most controversial defendants, he was born into something most people spend their entire lives trying to build: a legacy. The Murdaugh name was not ordinary in South Carolina. For nearly a century, the family was connected to the legal system of the Lowcountry. For generations, the courtroom was their territory. They represented victims. They fought cases. They built a reputation based on trust. Alex Murdaugh appeared to be the perfect continuation of that legacy. From the outside, Alex Murdaugh had the life many people dream about: a successful career, a respected name, a family connected to power. But behind the image was a reality that would eventually destroy everything. The collapse of Alex Murdaugh did not begin with murder. It began with secrets. These revelations would later become central to the prosecution's argument about motive. On June 7, 2021, Alex Murdaugh's world changed forever. A mother and son were dead, and a family name that represented justice for generations became the center of a murder investigation. At first, investigators searched for an unknown killer, but slowly attention moved closer to home. In a case without a surviving eyewitness, the evidence had to reconstruct a story. The trial was not only about murder, it was about the collapse of an American dynasty. The prosecution did not simply present evidence. They presented a story. After weeks of testimony, the jury reached its decision: guilty. For millions watching around the world, this was the final chapter. But it was not. A verdict is supposed to bring certainty, but certainty depends on trust. The question was no longer only whether Alex Murdaugh committed the crime. The question became whether the trial itself was conducted fairly. The second trial creates something unusual. The evidence that once convinced one jury must now convince another. For the defense, forensic questions become part of a wider argument. Could there be evidence that was overlooked? Could the original interpretation of the crime scene change? DNA does not automatically rewrite history. It does something more important. It forces investigators to look again. The Alex Murdaugh case began as a story about murder. Then it became a story about money. Then power. Then justice. But perhaps the biggest question is the one that remains unanswered. When a verdict changes, does the truth change with it? The Murdaugh case has always been about more than one family. It is about power, trust, evidence, and the fragile line between justice and certainty. Because the hardest cases are not always the ones without answers. Sometimes they are the cases where every answer creates another question. The story of Alex Murdaugh is not just a story about crime. It is a story about power, trust, justice, and the fragile line between certainty and doubt. Because sometimes the most important question is not simply, what happened? But, did we truly understand what happened? If stories like this make you look deeper, subscribe, turn on your notifications button, and join us as we investigate the cases that challenge what we think we know. Weekly. Every case has a story. Every story has unanswered questions. And sometimes the truth is hidden in the details.